There are valid concerns about intrusion and privacy regulations, but follow the rules and the results will be a transparent system which only succeeds if it provides value to the individuals concerned. This is what Drew Bates, head of product marketing at SAP Innovation Lab, told Forbes magazine in 2017. But what was he referring to? SAP are a global business that work on a range of technological projects in 16 locations across the world. The development in question is the topic of this film, facial recognition technology. Face recognition is a technology capable of identifying or verifying a subject through an image, video, or any audio-visual element of a person's face. And it is without a doubt one of the most powerful surveillance tools ever invented by mankind. Many of us have seen facial recognition used in films and TV for decades, but as is the fate of many complex matters when transplanted into popular culture, face recognition is rarely depicted correctly. So, how does it work exactly? While every facial recognition system works differently, the process can be divided into 3 main steps. Step 1. Detection. This is the process in which a face is found within an image. Plenty of phones now do this when you're about to take a picture by auto-focusing on the face or on images that are already stored on the phone, automatically creating folders of pictures including specific people on your camera roll. Step 2. Analysis or attribution. This is the process by which faces are mapped. This is done measuring things such as the distance between a person's eyes, the distance between their nose and lips, and the general contours of their face. These measurements are then translated into a string of figures or points, usually called a face print. This is the technology behind Instagram and Snapchat filters, which can often suffer from glitches. However, when faces are added to recognition databases, be that by corporations or governments, misidentification can become a serious threat. Step 3. Recognition. Finally, this is the technology's process of verifying the identity of a person within an image, or rather trying to. Any of us who use the Apple Face ID feature to unlock our iPhones know well that it can be unreliable, even on this small scale. However, as I mentioned before, databases that are deliberately aimed at targeting certain people, or that say wider political, ethnic or religious groups or members of them, can be more ruthless and reliable if needs be.
Is that it was almost an inevitability with the invention of video. And even before video was a mass phenomenon, there were concerns about its use and implementation, especially obviously in the 1984 novel. And whilst we don't seem to have, on at least the same scale as Orwell's dystopia, a two-way video in every home, there has been an increasing presence of video facial recognition technology in the public square. And for instance, in Birmingham, where I live, there is the New Street Station. And when it was rebuilt as Grand Central, it had these 3 eyes. That was how it was referred to. These large eye-shaped screens that were marketed as being the next step in advertising, because they were able to change what they showed based on the composition of the crowd that it was looking out on. So there's, as I said, there's 3 of these eyes. And the point is that they are called eyes because they do literally watch the crowd. They and it's obviously based on, you know, mass data collection. So if it shows a majority, say, young female crowd, then they're probably going to shift to makeup or similar kind of products.
Kittens.
Well, but see, the reason this matters so much in terms of the public square is that the public square was historically somewhere that was not necessarily as observed as the private square. And the interesting change in that is that in Birmingham especially, there are clear, distinct lines of public and private. So for instance, if you walk to the Bullring, there is a line in the pavement where the paving slabs do change, and that's because on one side it's public and on one side it's private. This matters so much because public demonstrations can be broken up so much more quickly with facial recognition technology. You can essentially prevent them from occurring before they even start. But also the reason that they matter in terms of the public square is that the public square is the place of spontaneity in public life.
However, we also know that facial recognition technology can result in gross violations of privacy on the individual and societal level, and can be used as a tool for state and corporate tyranny. It creates data vulnerabilities, provides opportunities for fraud and other crimes, and can misidentify the very people it's trying to locate. On this matter, I spoke with the American journalist and former challenger for the Republican Party presidential nomination, Zoltan Istvan, about why he is in favour of facial recognition technology.
There are definitely limits to how facial recognition should be used. I mean, I certainly don't want everyone to be recognized all the time, everywhere. In fact, one of my main policies, I think, is really that you would probably, after 72 hours, whatever facial recognition there was done, to delete it permanently so that you're not always on record. And I think that would be a good policy for kind of stopping crime that might be happening or helping traffic victims in the immediate, scenario without actually keeping records of everybody forever. I think there's a lot of reasons that people might want to opt out of facial recognition technology. And frankly, I totally approve that. I mean, I want facial recognition so that we can kind of increase safety around the world. But I also think people should have a right to find ways around it. And so, for example, if you want to walk into a private enterprise like a big superstore or whatever, and you want your privacy, I think there should be a way to opt out of that kind of technology. And so it's not that we're going to kind of, you want to put it so that it's totally oppressive and fastest and all this other things. There are ways to preserve liberty while also using facial recognition for overall safety of the populace. Well, transhumanism is a social movement of people that want to use technology to upgrade their bodies and their lives. And so naturally, facial recognition really goes well with that idea, because you can use facial recognition to pay for things like at a coffee shop. You can use it to stop human trafficking around the world. You can use it to recognize if your child has accidentally walked out the door or something like that. There's a whole bunch of safety reasons that it'd be very useful. So we would consider that under kind of the branch of transhumanism. And you can even get further with facial recognition. You might be able to notice if people have COVID or something like that because they have a fever. I mean, facial recognition isn't just limited to what you see. Eventually, it's going to be limited to people's health. It might even be able to detect cancer in 10 or 20 years' time on somebody. So there's a whole world that we're starting to uncover. 10 or 20 years, I think facial recognition will really be a tool for not just safety, but actual health. I mean, we're going to have this kind of infrared technology that can recognize diseases on your body, that can recognize if you're in extreme levels of stress, that can recognize maybe even if you're suicidal. So there's actually real reasons that you would want, especially if you're a parent, let's say you have a child who's suicidal, you would want facial recognition to pick that up. So I think the 10, 20-year window really involves a lot more than just like stopping crime or monitoring human trafficking. It's really going to be monitoring our personal selves, how we feel, if somebody's overly depressed, if somebody has some kind of strange disease that maybe they didn't go to the doctor yet. But facial recognition is going to probably be able to scan and discover almost everything about you at some point in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, it's a wonderful technology in terms of really preserving the health of your life.
In 2019, London's Metropolitan Police revealed that the facial recognition technology they had been using had misidentified members of the public as potential criminals in 96% of their scans. China's facial recognition system logs almost every single citizen within the country's borders, operating via a vast network of surveillance across the country, from the largest cities to the smallest villages. A database leak in 2019 gave a major glimpse into how this operates. Over 6.8 million records were taken on a single day from cameras positioned around all manner of buildings across the country, including places of worship. They gathered information on people as young as 9 days old.
I mean, technology plays an absolutely crucial role. I mean, people have talked about China now as really the surveillance state. So in Xinjiang in particular, I mean, Xinjiang is just full of facial recognition cameras, various other ways of checking monitoring people's mobile phones, the use of GPS to monitor people's movements, and plus old-fashioned surveillance as well. I mean, checkpoints and roadblocks on every corner. And then in Hong Kong, I think it's certainly increasing. I think, again, surveillance cameras, facial recognition cameras, artificial intelligence, and monitoring online activities are a big part of the repression in Hong Kong. And in the rest of China, all these things are increasing as well, and particularly the use of the so-called social credit score. So your online activities are monitored, and then depending on what websites you're looking at, if you've been found to be looking at websites that the party doesn't approve of, that can result in a reduced social credit score.
Facial recognition and its implications cannot simply be dismissed as the practices of faraway authoritarian regimes. They operate extensively in the UK. According to the Reuters news agency, Freedom of Information requests filed in late 2020 with all 32 London councils and the next 20 largest UK city councils found that about 2/3 owned technology made by 2 Chinese companies accused of links to the repression of Uyghurs. At least 28 of these councils own technology made by Hikvision, the world's largest purveyor of video surveillance systems and a vendor to Xinjiang police agencies. 6 London boroughs and 3 other councils did not respond to requests about their links with Chinese firms or denied having enough data to disclose what they had deployed. Whether it's used to innocently unlock our phones, or rather more scarily to report us incorrectly to the police, FRT is to the advantage of many authorities, private and public, and thus it's really in no one's interest in authority to question it. While innovation when it comes to anti-FRT accessories, such as patterns and makeup, as I mentioned before, really display an overwhelming thirst for privacy in our increasingly public society, it really seems that facial recognition technology is going nowhere. Of course, there are some practical advantages to FRT technology, which really is itself a product of human genius. Identifying really dangerous criminals, terrorists, or, as has been pointed out, helping people with health issues maybe in future. However, it seems that as FRT increasingly becomes almost an inevitable part of our increasingly technological society, while some of these techniques can be employed in free countries like Japan, the UK, or the US, people living under authoritarian regimes will simply face further oppression if they're seen to opt out of the overarching surveillance system. In 2013, researchers in Japan created privacy visor glasses that used infrared light to make the face underneath it unrecognisable to face recognition software. Facial recognition, like any human technology, can be used for good and can be used for bad. However, it is increasingly placed in the hands of authoritarian governments or free governments that crave increasingly more authority. There are sadly so many pointers to the fact that the 21st century could end up being even more authoritarian than the 20th, which entailed many disasters that I don't think need recap here. And the fact is that facial recognition technology will probably play a large part in that across the world, and in fact, it already is. You are the town, and we are the clock. We are the guardians of the gate and the rock, the two. On your left and on your right, in the day and in the night, we are watching you. Wiser not to ask just what has occurred, To them who disobeyed our word, to those, we were the whirlpool, we were the reef, and we were the formal nightmare, grief. And the unlucky rose, climb up the crane, learn the sailors' words, when the ships from the islands laden with birds come in, tell your stories of fishing and other men's wives, the expansive moments of constricted lives in the lighted inn. But do not imagine we do not know, nor that what you hide with such care won't show at a glance. Nothing is done, nothing is said, but don't make the mistake of believing us dead. I shouldn't dance. We're afraid in that case you'll have a fall. We've been watching you over the garden wall for hours. The sky's darkening like a stain. Something is going to fall like rain, and it won't be flowers. When the green field comes off like a lid, revealing what was much better hid, unpleasant. And look, behind you without a sound, the woods have come up and are standing round in deadly crescent. The bolt is sliding in its groove. Outside the window is the black removers van. And now, with sudden swift emergence, come the woman in dark glasses and humpback surgeons and the scissors man. This might happen any day, so be careful what you say or do. Be clean, be tidy, oil the lock. Trim the garden, wind the clock. Remember the two.